It's a pleasure to have you and to have accorded us this time. So you've spent few days here in the country. So far, what is your impressions in the country of Thousand Hills?
Well, first of all, allow me to thank you for your interest and in the work of the European Union. And as you mentioned, I'm the new EU ambassador in the country, and I'm recently arrived in Rwanda. I had the privilege to present my letters of credence to His Excellency President Kagame last week, and I'm new in the country, but I would say that I'm not new in the region and in the continent. So I'm very much aware of a number of issues concerning this country, and I must say that I'm really impressed by the sense of purpose that I see in when I look at your very ambitious development strategies and the vision behind this development strategy. My initial feeling is that this is really a shared vision. It's not something which is just decided, and the implementation is something which is taken very seriously at different level. And I can appreciate the order, of course the cleanness of this town is something which is shocking to an external visitor, and this again I understand is also the result of let's say of the commitment of the whole citizenship. I mean, in terms of contributing to this status of the city.
Yeah. Yes, of course, there are big lines existing between the partnership of EU and Rwanda. But during your tenure, what do you think will be the main focus of the relationship and the partnership?
Well, as you mentioned, the nature of our relation is quite wide, and we look, of course, at bilateral relations, but we also look at regional and continental relations, and this is quite relevant at this very moment. And this also allows me to congratulate again President Kagame on the chairmanship of the African Union. I think that the continent relation is something which is really high on our agenda. And we really, we have a lot of expectations about the leadership of President Kagame, that in our opinion would also impact, of course, in a positive way, and the relations that the European Union has with the African Union and the whole continent. So when it comes to the bilateral relation, of course, as you know, the European Union is sort of contributing to these very ambitious development objectives of the country. We are investing quite a lot, and our partnership is focused on agriculture and energy infrastructure. And so we will continue, of course, to support this process. At the same time, and so beyond our development assistance, we also engage in a political dialogue with the country, which is also the opportunity to address a wide range of issues, which are, of course, relevant to the country, but also relevant as the country and the EU and our member states are part of what we call the international community. And as member of the international community, we have on both sides taken some commitments in some international treaties, conventions, that we are, we are also open to this kind of, it's not a one-way sort of dialogue. So we are ready to engage in a constructive and respectful way in order to advance a number of issues, once again in full respect of our, let's say, respective roles and responsibilities, but again as responsible partners and members of the international community.
Yeah, you said that you are congratulating President Paul Kagame, and this brings me to this question. President Paul Kagame started chairing the African Union. Can you elaborate a bit more about what you are expecting from the African Union during this year that President Paul Kagame will be chairing that union?
Well, it is a shared opinion that the continental organization has a huge potential. I mean, we as European Union, we went a long way when it comes to regional integration and to the creation of what we call the European internal market, which also involves the free movement of people, capitals, and goods and services. And we see the potential of the regional and continental integration in Africa. So, of course, in order to steer this process, you need strong and credible institutions. Now, there's been a lot of progress, a lot of efforts, and a lot of also investments, including from the European Union, in order to sort of generate that kind of level of engagement at the EU level. Then President Kagame has been, let's say, tasked to chair a special sort of task force to look at possible institutional reform of the organization. And now it coincides with his chairmanship. So we hope that he will be able to push forward and move forward and speed up the implementation and the agreement on this reform agenda, which again is not only an African issue. I mean, it's also something that will impact on the relations that the African continent and the African Union will develop with the rest of the international community, and in our case with the European Union. As European Union, and I have also a very personal sort of experience into this process. Yeah. I've been even recently involved in the Head of States and Government EU Summit, which has been once again an element into this partnership, and which also as an outcome document, very ambitious joint let's say activities, and I hope that we will be able to deliver in the near future, and also for Rwanda to take advantage of this continent-to-continent partnership. But of course, once again, at this very moment, and what we really hope is that the continental organization will be, let's say, strengthened. There is a strong political sort of buy-in of African member states, because I mean, once again, we know exactly the challenges. We're not saying it's an easy process. Also considering the number of member states of the African Union. So we appreciate the complexity of this process. At the same time, we are fully aware of the potential of this process. So our hope that this will see the light. Also the African internal economic space. So we sincerely hope that this process will move forward.
Considering it, looking at the bilateral relations continent to continent, what do you think can be really done to harness opportunities which are there to have a win-win partnership between African Union and the European Union?
Yes, I think you pointed to the very right and the very, let's say, topical issue. So what we are doing at this very moment is to move away from that kind of old-style donor-recipient logic. So you mentioned the win-win partnership, and that's a strong political partnership. So this is what we are really aiming at this very moment. And I think that all the conditions are there in order for this partnership really to deliver in the interest of the African citizens, but also of the European citizens. There are a number of opportunities. I mean, trade is the stability, of course, the peace and security. I mean, stable Africa means something for Europe. Stable Europe means something for Africa. Cultural relations, dialogue among different cultures. I think there are endless opportunities in order for us to strengthen and to develop this partnership. Trade is the most visible one, because in some areas of the continent, but hopefully this will develop also in this region. We are developing a new generation of trade agreement that will allow not only to let's say facilitate the exports from African countries to the EU, so to have a duty-free, quota-free access, but also to promote, let's say, and facilitate the import from the European Union, and the complementarity among these, what is exported and what is imported, is likely to play a very good role into the development of the country and the industrialization. I mean, imagine that an investor who would like to come here these days needs to pay a lot of duties, a lot of taxes. But if we go ahead with this new generation of trade agreement, that would be easier for an investor to decide to invest in an African country, because the cost of the investment will be reduced because of this trade regime.
Yeah. We are moving to the end of this interview, but I have the almost last question. There is now a serious issue, serious problem in Africa, but I think it is worldwide, the African migrants. I want to hear from you, is the European Union feeling concerned by this issue of African migrants?
Well, yes, definitely. I mean, this issue is on top of our agenda. We are looking at, let's say, comprehensive solutions and a shared solution. This being said, I think that our first thought goes to the, let's say, the human impact of this phenomenon, which is costing a lot of life, and this is unacceptable in these days. So we're doing our best to address the root causes of these migration issues, trying to promote investment, to create the conditions in the country of origins, let's say, to avoid this situation. And of course, we are also working very hard and in partnership with the different countries and regions, but also with the UN system. So we are developing a sort of a triangular cooperation between the AU, the UN, and the EU to also address the trafficking dimension and to monitor this and to sanction this whenever it's needed. But once again, our main objective, beyond of the human one, saving lives of the people who are trying to go in different countries, is to address the root causes. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the vast majority of migrants remains in Africa, so they move from one continent to the others. In other situations, you have internal displacement of people, mainly for crisis. So we have to have a shared approach. It's not the EU who should work on something, or an African country, or other development partners, or other members of the international community. I strongly feel that this is something that needs to be addressed together. I mean, we cannot find solutions on our own. You cannot find solutions on your own. This requires a collective and strong commitment of the countries, but in particular the leaders, in order to address this situation. I must say that we are quite we appreciate the strong commitment of the African leaders to address this issue. Of course, Rwanda has announced that it will play also a special role into this process, and we are ready, of course, to explore any opportunity to support, to accompany, to advise into this process. But once again, it's not a single state or a single entity that can address this issue.
Yeah. We are moving to the end of this interview, but do you have something more to add?
Well, no. Once again, I'm extremely happy and honored, I would say, to represent the European Union in this country. You are fully aware of the level of engagement and the good relations that exist between the European Union and the government of Rwanda. And so, I think I will build on these existing excellent relations. Once again, in a genuine partnership, like I have with my wife. Sometimes we disagree on something, but this does not mean that there is no a coherence and a shared vision. So, as in all genuine partnership, we will engage in constructive dialogue with the authorities, and hopefully, thanks to our partnership, this country will meet its objectives in the near future.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you.